Good evening, parents. Mrs. P here again. I just realized I always say that. I think you by now know that this is me. Anyway, here's a new video today for the students when they come home with their math homework, which of course they do have math homework. But I said I was really kind today. Yesterday it was 14 probes. Today I cut it in half. They only have 7. Tomorrow I'll try to do even better for them. But getting back to our homework, today we talked extensively in class about our new lesson known as percents of a quantity. Now I know they don't want to hear this, and maybe you don't either. It's actually something we've already done. When we did our Sharps Market activity and we went up to buy the meal and they had $20 to spend, and then they had to figure the tax on what they spent for the meal, that's percent of a quantity. We want to know what amount of money am I spending on what I spent for my dinner, or what amount of money am I being charged in tax for what I spent on my dinner. So today, this is what we're working on. And I let the kids know, here's mathematical terms and words, percents of a quantity. So we broke that down. What does that mean? That's percents, percent sign. Of, in mathematics, the majority of the time means multiplication. What isn't a quantity? Well, they right away said a quantity is an amount. How would you represent an amount? By using a number. So what percents of a quantity really means is take a percent and multiply it by the number you're given. So we went through some rules that they needed to do, and I'm going to show you just a few of the funny things I did with them today. Say we went to Sharps, we spent $16 on that meal. We're going to be charged 8% tax. Well, it says this is finding the percent of a quantity. I want to know how much is this going to be on $16? How much is 8% when I'm being charged that on $16? How much is it? Well, we know if we say it's a percent multiplied by a number, there's my number, there's my percent, I'm going to use multiplication. You can't write it like that. Come on, right? I asked the kids, how many of you know what percent sign times 0 is? Well, you don't. You don't want to leave the symbol, the sign, the mathematical sign in the problem. So you can't leave 8% written as its number and its sign. So what can I do to that? Go to yesterday. Go to the day before. Go to the month before when we talked about fractions, decimals, and percents. I have to convert that. Now I can do 2 conversions. I can turn it into a fraction, or I can turn it into a decimal. Well, if I want to turn it into a fraction, I say it's 8 over 100. Again, do you think your kids want to do a multiplication problem that looks like that? They love to have the problems written vertically, up and down. Now, they could technically do it if they turned it horizontally, like this. But again, I don't think your kids want to mess with fractions that much. Now, if they do, great. And they can get it right, awesome. But I tell kids the easiest thing to really do is turn that percent into a decimal. And we know to turn a percent into a decimal, we move the decimal to the left, even though I'm going that way, to the left 2 times. Only 2 times. And just so I make it clear for the kids, I'm going to flip that arrow. We're going to go to the left 2 times. You move that decimal. If you don't see a decimal, you always know the decimal is at the end of the number. So I go once, I go twice. No number there, add a 0, place my decimal. My 8%, which is really 8 hundredths, is 8 hundredths. I'm going to ignore that. You ignore that with me if you don't mind. Is 8 hundredths. So now I have a decimal. Can I come over here and multiply a whole number by that decimal? Well, yes, I can. I don't need to line up the decimals when I'm multiplying. It just works that way for this problem. And then I multiply it out. 0, 0, 48, carry my 4, that's 12. 0 placeholder, 0, 0, 0, 0. Add them all up. I then have to remember, once I've looked and I found my percent and I want to multiply it by a whole number, I've converted my percent into a decimal. Got to remember how to do that. I've now done my multiplication, and now I have to be able to count and move my decimal. Because I don't know about you parents, but you go spend 16 bucks at Sharp's Market. They charge you 8% tax. Do you want to pay $12,800 in tax? I think not. So now we just have to count the decimal spots. 1, 2, 3, 4. I counted them. Now I just want to move it. Starting at the back again. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is telling me 8% of $16 is $1.28. Now I'm going to think, parents, that seems pretty reasonable to you on $16. More reasonable than $12,800. And that's how you do percents of a number, or percents of a quantity, which means the same thing as percents multiplied by a number. And it doesn't matter what the number looks like. Here's 4%. Here's 160%. Here is 0.5%. Now you look at that and you're probably saying to yourself, 160%? That isn't gonna work. Well, it most certainly can. You can have more than 100 of something, more than 100%. We did these in class today. So let's look. I take 50 and I multiply it by 0.04. Multiply it out. I take 160. I move my decimal, 1.60 times 30. I multiply it out. This percent already has a decimal in it. I told your students today, that doesn't matter. That is not this as a decimal. It just means the percent is a decimal. I still have to move it. Once, twice, it now looks like 0.005 times 12. And if you look at these, there's some number sense that should be happening. 4% of 50. Right away, your students should know, well, if it's 4% of 50, I know I'm going to get a number less than 50. It has to be smaller. I only have 4% of it. They know what 50% of 50 is. They know it's $25. So 4% has to be less. 160% of 30, wait a minute. If I have 160% of 30, doesn't that mean I already have 30? So this has to be larger than 30, because I already have 100% of it. So it's got to be more than 30. And this one, 0.5, it's not even 1%. So we know it's got to be a very, very small amount. In fact, it is so small amount, that it's probably going to have a decimal in it. Whole number less than 50, whole number larger than 30, a part of a whole, because it was already part of a percent, okay? And that's what we did today. I hope that helps a little bit. I could work all these out for you, but you know that would probably be too long. I'm probably already running over my status quo about 8 minutes. So these are what we worked on, letting them know percents of a quantity really means take the percent, multiply it by the whole number they have, make sure to convert the percent into a decimal. Once you do the multiplication, make sure to count and move the decimal from our decimal rules that we learned way back in September and October. And then work the problems out to find your solutions. If your students, again, have any questions, I'm always available. They can email me, message me on the Remind app if you would let them. If you have any questions, you can always email me. I think we're doing a really great job right now. I think we're really having some great understanding, and I just think that we're going to keep moving forward with some great positivity, and that before you know it, we'll be done with this chapter, and we'll be moving on to measurements. Again, I thank you for all your help and for all your kind patience with me and for watching the videos with your students. Until the next time, have a great evening.